growing like 3 times each year, like 7 years in a row, like 3 times, 3 times, 3 times, and 3 times. Yeah, and it's hard, and I want to share with you some my experience, and maybe you can recommend me some tips and tricks, and maybe you can get some for your team, for your company. So I briefly introduce myself. As you know, I'm Mike. I work as a product manager, and last few years as a chief product officer. So in my team, it's more than 60 product managers. So it's really big team. Yeah, and I work in a biggest social network in Europe and Eastern Europe. It's more than 100 million users in this social network. It's vk.com, and also really big search engine and a lot of things. It's also more than 100 million people audience. It's named Yandex. And right now I'm working like chief product officer, like product director in Skyeng. And also, yeah, nice to see you in our community ProductStar, in our big global community. Yeah. So some words about Skyeng for your understanding about company and about growth. So right, it's an educational company. It's an online platform to work in, to study lessons, English and mathematical lessons with real teachers. So we connect real teachers, and we're working on educational with these teachers and students. And right now on our platform, more than 6 million lessons. And it's cool, and it's like a biggest educational startup in Europe right now. And yeah, and I want to share some my experience as product director of this company, how to work with this. Yeah, so in our company, we really love growth. So it's one of our thing in our culture. So every year we say, okay, we should grow 3 times this year by revenue and by students. And each year we do not know how we can do it, but with our great team, every year we reach this growth like 3 times. So here's some examples, some graphs of our growth in last years. So what helped us to do this growth? What things? Firstly, when I discuss with something about our growth, I remember about our like small tradition. Every year we do relocation. So because company growing, also employees of company, also number of employees in our company growing. So it's like small traditions that every year we change our office. So we take all of our employees and moving to other office, bigger one. So it's like a small tradition of our company in growing. So we have some basic principles of growing in our company, and they really helps to us. The first, and I think the main one principle is about we like really mathematical guys. So we really thinking about everything in the numbers. So it's like absolutely 100% data-driven company. So our first principle is everything can be counted in money. So maybe you have a speech on a conference. Okay, you can count it in some money. How many money you can give to your company after this speech. Or you have some meeting with someone, or you're just thinking about new features in your company. Everything should be counted in the money, and it helps to our company to prioritize about what we want to do. The second principles of a company is a quick feedback. Yeah, I 100% believe that it's really good thing about company culture. How does it work? So, for example, you have a meeting with your team, with your boss, with other guys, with other teams, and once maybe you feel you're uncomfortable because maybe someone say some rude words about you or about your team or about something. And our principle, if you feel something strange, if you feel something that not in our principles, you should give feedback to this person. And it's really important. It can be first time hard to give feedback to other people because sometimes it can be negative feedback or something like this, but it helps company to feel comfortable. It helps company to do better job and move faster. And the third main principle of our company, we really open to all of ideas and experiments. So, for example, some product manager want to launch new service. Okay, fine. He can start this service, but himself and try some minimum viable product, and he's absolutely free. Or maybe, for example, so some person want to try new processes like Agile or Scrum or other things in his team, maybe. Okay, it's no any restriction in our whole company about processes and about new experiments. And because usually we try new experiments in the process, in people management, in other things like every week. Like every week, we are trying one new experiment in our org structure of our company, in our processes, and so on. And it helps us to find the things that really helps us. Other thing is about how you're working with the persons, how to work with your team. What is the main in your company? Is it some project ideas? Is it some maybe? Is it some roadmaps? Is it some strategy things, or it's people, or it's some your employees? And in our company, we truly believe that people are first one thing in a company, because if you have great people in your company, they can give you great roadmaps and nice plans, and only then they can help you to reach what do you want, and only they can give you some this big growth that we have in our company. And that's why we are thinking that company growth in a people growth. It's our principle in a company. And for every person who working in our company, and right now in our company works like more than 5,000 employees. we promise skill pumping of this person. So you starting in our company with one set of your skills, and after 1 year with our processes, with our working, with you personally, like as product manager or like as developer, you can do like twice more skills. You can pump up the skills. And I want to share with you some our instruments, some our tools that we use to pump up our product managers. And as I said, right now in our company is more than 60 product managers. The first one thing is one-on-one meetings. Yeah, it's not like meetings with the whole team. It's like personal meetings between product manager and his horizontal head, like chief product officer, like me. And these meetings, it's not for me. It's really about a product manager to help him. It's usually takes 30 or 60 minutes, and I do it once per week or once per 2 weeks. The second tool that we use in our company is about like lessons. So because we were an educational company, we do some format as lessons for product manager guys. So every week on Monday, we take 1.5 hours for whole product management team and do like a lesson. So it's like a real lesson. Someone have a speech about some new things, about some new ideas in product management, for example. And then we do some practice. It can be practice, so it's real-time practice. So you can imagine like working class, and here is 60 product managers, and everyone do some homework in real time, like working with unit economy, working with analytical tasks or something like this. And it really helps for us. The third thing is about cross-check. So in our company, we think that planning process is really important. So sometimes to plan, for example, 1 quarter, we take near 2 weeks or maybe 1 month. It's a big time, but we think that planning really helps for the company. And one of the parts of planning process is cross-check process. How it look like? For example, product manager thinking about roadmap on next quarter, and he understands that he wants to do like 10 projects, and he makes some ideas, some unit economy, some analytical things for these projects to understand, is it a good projects or not? Is it really important for our company? And then as the product managers do some kind of challenge him. So we have like special meetings with the challenging plans. It's named in our company as cross-check. Next tools that really helps for us, it's weekly networking. Why it's important for us? Because I also truly believe that no one knows a lot of things in a product managers. And of course, you need to do networking like we do with you today. And in our process, of our company, every week we have some guests in our company. So for example, previous week we have guests from Booking.com, and next week we will invite some guests from Amazon. And it's really cool when some other guys from other companies come to your office and share some experience with your team, and you, vice versa, also share some experience with this team. And it really helps us to get more information, get more ideas when we can be better in our processes, in our growth. The fifth one tool for our product managers is personal development plan. So for every person in our company, we have a personal development plan. So everyone understands which skill set he or she has right now, and understand what kind of skill set he or she can have after 1 year, and understands his some kind of roadmap and some steps to move from A to B. Next things is about mentoring. I believe that it's also important, and a lot of guys in our company have mentoring. It can be internal mentor or maybe external mentor, because it's cool when someone, not your boss, can suggest you some good things, or maybe say it way wrong, or maybe share his experience, because usually mentor have 10 years more experience than you, and we trying to find mentors for our product managers over the whole world to make our product managers better. Well, what else helps to our company, helps to our growth? We have some idea that it's about decentralized company. So because we need to move faster, we do not have a lot of time for discussion. And we said, okay, if you want to start some business inside our company, you're free to start your idea, you're free to start your business, and we will see on your business after 3 months. And if it's okay, if it's growing, we help you with all of our resources. So for example, we do not have in our company, we do not have one team. We have a lot of teams. For example, the first team do some products for kids in English education. The second big team, it's more than 200 people, do some products in adult education. And third team do some products in B2B products for companies in English education. So and in every part of this team is absolutely decentralized development, for example. So we do not have any dependencies between our different units, like business units. And it helps each unit to move with his own speed and do not wait for development in other units. And it's also really help us to shipping our product faster. The last things that is really helps for us, we name it CIBP. It's critically important business processes. Why it's important for our company? Our company like a startup, but it's 7 years old company, so it's old enough to have a lot of processes, because it's a big team. It's more than 5,000 employees with a big history, with a lot of experiments in the processes and so on. And for example, in our company, we have, I think, more than 500 processes about development, about design, about organizational structure, about anything. And it's a lot. No one can remember all of these processes. What we usually do, we highlight only the main processes that really helps us. Usually, right now, it's near 30 processes. And we're working to improve only the main one processes, like the best top 10 processes in our company. So we're working a lot on a focus on that processes that really important on your company. So my suggestion to you is when you will be working in some startup or some really fast growing team, please think about what is the main processes, what is the main thing of your team, and please try to focus only on top 3 processes, only on top 3 ideas. So keep focusing, guys, and I hope it helps you to live, to do the best job in your company, in your startup. Yeah. So thank you. It was nice to meet. To make some pitch for you, to share my experience, to share my ideas, and also if you want to get some template, for example, how we pumping up product managers of our team, I think it can be also useful for you personally, or maybe for your product team. You can contact me. Yeah, so thank you. And yeah, I can answer on your questions. Yeah. So yeah, if you have some questions, please write it here in the chat. And yeah. And yeah, you can think on your questions, and we're waiting about our next speaker. So yeah, and I want to suggest all of today's speaker to push button that names raise hand, and I can see you as a speaker, and you can invite. Yep, I see. Alankar, cool. Oh, yeah, nice question. Yeah, right now our team located in Russia, it's like headquarters. But what interestingly, we are really a remote company. So for example, in our headquarters, working only 10% of a company, 10 persons. And other guys, they're working in a different countries. So right now it's more than 50 plus countries where working our guys. So it's like all the world. It's a lot of guys in Europe, a lot of guys in Asia, some guys in US also. Yep, I see the next question. So how helpful is decentralization of teams? The teams being completely independent rather than being dependent on the one other. Doesn't it affect the synchronization at all? Yeah, nice question. Of course, yeah. Every time you should make a choice. What is better for you to make a good synchronization between all of your teams and have a really good quality of your products and really nice customer experience, like first option. And second option, have a really decentralized team that can grow faster, but it can be less synchronized between teams, and sometimes it can a little bit decrease customer journey, things of your of your customers, of students, for example, in our case. For our company, for first time of grown, we choose the second option, because for us it's really important to growing. Yeah, and of course you every time get this choice. Yes, and I think after 1, 2, maybe 3 years, we will change it and we will move to other stage of our company. And this stage will be more about stability, more about other things, and maybe less about growing. And on this step of our company, we will change our processes and moving to the option 1 with a big synchronize between teams. Yep. Okay, so let me introduce our next speaker. It's product manager, head of product from Gojek. I will add him to by video to us. Hi.
Hi there.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Same here. Really excited
Cool.
to be here.
Yeah, you can start your video and say hello for all our participants here and on YouTube stream. Hey, yeah, and on Facebook, and please,
Hi, everyone.
yeah, cool, yeah. Okay, so
So should I start?
yeah, let's start. You can briefly introduce yourself for all our participants and then share your experience. Yeah, and thank you for your participation.
All right. So hello, everyone. It's glad to be here and sharing my experiences with you all, from all of you from different parts of the world. It's really great to be here. I am Kshitij. I am head of product for consumer platform at Gojek. Uh, because the time is not too much, we have roughly 15 minutes. I'll try to touch upon a bunch of points that were mentioned in the topic, and I'll try to stick to 15 minutes. I'll just share my screen, and right after that, I'll just give a brief introduction about myself. So I don't really have a presentation. I believe that this could be more beneficial if it's more of a conversation. So I'll look forward to your questions at the end.
Cool. Yeah.
I'll just briefly tell you about my experience now. Uh, I actually was a designer. I'm a designer turned product manager. I did my education in design. Then I started as an interaction designer with Flipkart, and then over the years I switched to product management, and I've been at Gojek for roughly 2.5 years now as a product manager. So that's a very brief introduction about me. Let's move on to the topic of this session. It's about what is the product culture in Gojek product teams, and how do we keep each other motivated? What are the processes, and how do we ensure an efficient work environment, because we have so many remote offices? How do we collaborate with each other? So I'll just start with product culture. However, product culture is actually it's the result of all the other things that are mentioned here, but I'll just quickly touch upon very basic things that can be called out separately. So at Gojek, I believe most of you would be familiar with the term OKRs, which is objective and key results. So this is for those of you who are not aware of OKRs. They're basically it's a technique which was developed long ago, and then familiarized or popularized during Intel's time, and then it got adopted by Google, and then it became massively famous among Silicon Valley companies back in early 2000s. It's mainly about you define objectives, a few objectives for your team, for your company, and you define how are you going to measure them with 2 or 3 results which can be objectively measured. So in Gojek, we are roughly in our fourth, I think we're in the fourth or fifth iteration of OKR cycle, and it is turning out pretty well now. So this is something which is directly driving the product culture at Gojek. Uh, with OKRs, we also follow a bottom-up OKRs process where the OKRs are not actually coming from the top. They're mainly some strategic themes which are defined by the company council or the company leaders, the CEOs. So uh, after those strategic themes are defined, uh, each team defines their own OKRs from the bottom, and then they all of them try to get together in a room, and then they uh, try to synergize and get to the OKRs which are directly aligned to the strategic themes, and then the company OKRs are also defined. So this is, as I said, this is our fourth or fifth iteration. So OKRs is something which cannot be immediately implemented and expect massive results, because this is something which has to be adapted to your own company's work culture or environment. So yeah, this is how we are doing at Gojek. Then another thing which stands out at Gojek is that we have a bias for execution or launching than getting stuck in analysis paralysis, because now that we are such a big company and there's so many products that we are building or releasing, uh, it's very easy to get stuck in analysis mode and keep on doing more and more data analysis. But we try to uh, prove all of our hypotheses by doing, rather than just getting stuck in data analysis. However, we are data informed, and we try to have our hypothesis backed by data, but we have a very strong experimentation frameworks where we quickly launch features and measure the results rather than just getting stuck uh, in our data analysis. Our development cycles, our process, it's mainly agile development process. So it's a typical agile development process. However, as I said, the team, we are such a big company. We have more than 22 products and services. So, and it's just one application. So there's this whole super app thing, and you guys must have already read about Uber also getting into this super app concept. So this is something which grew over time at Gojek, and similarly our competition is also doing this whole super app thing. So having so many services into one application, it becomes there has to be a process which caters to all the different requirements of other teams, so yet not break the user experience in the application, and keep on giving value to our customers. So we have a ruthless prioritization, uh, uh, where we go back to our OKRs whenever there's a confusion, and we say that, okay, this is something which has the highest impact, and this is something which is also affecting other teams. Let's just prioritize one thing and then kill it, and rather than getting stuck in multiple things. And to support this, we have a bi-weekly release, app release cycles, where every 2 weeks we are pushing out app updates. So that makes sure that things are not getting stuck, and we are continuously churning out more and more features for our users. And it's actually not just users, and it's not just super app for users. We actually have three major ecosystems. One is for customers, other two are actually for drivers and merchants. And those two super apps are something which is not commonly talked about in tech blogs and in different media channels. We are actually also building super apps for drivers as well as our partner merchants. We have more than 2 million drivers and more than 500,000 merchants. So those applications are also taking care of not just their order management needs. It's going beyond. It's taking care of their financial needs and all of that. So that, and then we have regular sharing sessions between our PMs. So Gojek has actually a lot of PMs. We have more than 120 PMs with a lot more joining soon. So to have everyone in sync with what's happening in different products, we keep on having a regular sharing sessions with each other, where we talk about things that we will be finishing or working on in next month or 2 months releasing, and if it is something which can be used by others to leverage the existing technology. So we use such platforms to help each other out. Coming to how do we keep ourselves motivated? So it actually becomes very easy for an application like Gojek, because if you look at Indonesia's population, it's roughly around 260 million people. But if you look at Gojek's downloads, it's actually around 140 million. So that's roughly 50 to 60% of the population who has already installed Gojek application or used at least once. So the scale is just massive. And for anyone to just look at this and imagine, okay, I'm going to be working on however a small feature, it's going to be impacting a lot of users, drivers and merchants. So it's actually very easy for us to get people excited about things that we are doing here. I'll give you an example. For example, there were our a fleet of more than 2 million drivers. They have a regular need of cashing out their earnings that they're doing every day, and they need that cash to keep on operating, because they have to buy food and fuel for their food for their families, fuel for operating their motorbikes for the next day. But to have that cash immediately available, that's a very important need for them. And in Indonesia, before we did this instant withdrawal mechanism for them, it used to take like at least 2 days to a week. And I mean, if you look at similar companies operating in other regions, it's sort of a norm to cash out in two days to a week. But what we did was we enabled our driver partners to withdraw instantly, and that changed their lives, because they could immediately withdraw all of the money that they earned at any instant. And this made their financial planning easier. They could plan say paying tuition fee for their children. So these kind of things are something which they're really inspiring, and they directly affect our users' lives. And this is something which keeps us motivated. uh, there are other vanity numbers that there are something which sort of they could also be looked at. For example, we in last 3 years, from June 2016 to 2019, June 2019, we grew 11 times in this 3 years duration. uh, like I mentioned earlier, that we have this robust experimentation framework. So even a smaller experiment that we run, we are touching more than hundreds of thousands of users. So that is sort of a dream come true for any uh, product manager, because not everyone is coming from big companies. They are coming from decent sized startups. So to have such a scale to make an impact, this is something which is really motivating. Apart from that, I think Mikhail also mentioned in his presentation about personal growth of PMs. So we also have a clear growth path for our PMs, and because our team is 120 plus of product managers. So what we have done is, and another interesting thing about Gojek is that it's not just one company. We are actually an amalgamation of multiple sister companies, and this strength of 120 product managers is distributed across those different companies. And those companies have their own requirements, their own uh, fine differences between the roles that are expected from a product manager. So what we have tried to do is we have tried to standardize the growth path for all of those PMs into a growth framework which captures most of the expectations which are expected of a product manager, and everyone is objectively measured on those paths, and we then give levels to our PMs and give them a clear visibility into how they can improve in a certain path and overall in the organization. So these kind of things, they kind of make it very easy for us to be motivated, keep on working at keep on solving the problems that we're solving at Gojek, and keep on uh, keep on being part of this whole Gojek journey. Coming to processes, I won't go down into details of every single process that we have at Gojek. I'll just broadly talk about the process that we follow at the strategic level and at the tactical execution level. So at strategic level, like I mentioned, we use OKRs to align everyone, every team that we have, the whole company towards a single goal. In this fourth or fifth iteration that we are in, we set half-yearly goals for us and yearly strategic themes that over this year we will try to be focusing on this sort of problems, and for the next 6 months, moving towards that goal, moving towards that solving themes in that solving problems in that theme. We'll try to reach at a goal that we can measure at the end of 6 months. So that is what we do. And as I mentioned, we have so many teams. So we try to have shared KRs between those teams so that there's no, pulling lags, or there's essentially there is effective collaboration happening between different teams because they have shared goals. And those goals, they make them, come together, solve a problem wherever it's required. There are actually so many problems. So the thing is that at Gojek, we have, there are scenarios where a couple of teams have like 100% of their KRs are shared because they are helping other teams out to, grow, to solve a user problem or a driver problem, and still creating a solution which is which doesn't require to be replicated or be redundant. It's the same solution which gets extended to different set of problems. So there are such things that we do at a strategic level. At a tactical or execution level, because we have so many teams, and each team has its sort of head of product, head of engineering, so and head of business. So there are some common processes that exist, but it's mostly how the team wants to operate. So there are actually some scenarios in which when two engineering teams are trying to collaborate, and one team is raising some push requests or PRs into someone else's team's code base, they are not merged or not accepted, not because it's not working, but it's because they do not follow the coding practices that the other team has. So there are such scenarios. But on the product side, what we try to do is we recently started expanding our product operations function, which is trying to standardize as many things as possible for the product org, so that when at least product managers are communicating with each other, because that's where most of the communication happens between teams, and these are the people who enable or are the face of the team when communication is happening. So we are trying to create some common processes around product managers, and it's going well. It's in a testing phase, but hopefully this should work out, because product ops is, again, it's a new function which is coming up all across industry. So we are trying that out. Coming to the remote working setup that we have. So right now, Gojek is operational in 4 Southeast Asian countries: Indonesia, Singapore, Vietnam, and Thailand. we have some acquisitions in Philippines as well, but we are not yet operational there. So how do we work, or how do we collaborate with each other? And interestingly, we have a big office or center in Bangalore, and yet we are not operational in India. So that's something which is again unique here. So in my current team, I would actually give an example of my previous team in Gojek, which was I was actually leading this liquidity of GoPay wallet at Gojek before, and that team I used to be involved with all the functions in Gojek in GoPay, because something like e-wallet is it has implications on the regulation side, on the legal side, marketing and operations. These are anyway something which are common across other functions, sales to expand our merchant network. So what I used to do was I used to frequently travel to Jakarta and some other places, some other cities whenever required. So I used to split my time, roughly 60 to 40 between Bangalore and Jakarta. And because as I mentioned, we had so many stakeholders earlier in terms of other functions. So I used to have weekly sync ups with each of those functions, because over a week a lot of things change. There's so many things happening all the time, and because a lot of us are in Bangalore, we are not always at the ground. So sometimes the information is coming late. So those kind of situations happen. So what I used to do was I started setting up weekly sync ups with each function heads and trying to be on the same page all the time. So this used to work, and this is how other teams are also trying to do. Apart from that, we have all the async channels to communicate, Slack and emails. Another thing that we are obsessive about in Gojek is excessive documentation about whatever we are doing. So we use Google Docs primarily for documenting everything, and we write down every single thing, every detail of the conversation that we have had, all the meetings that we have had into a log document, and we make it public so that uh, things are not getting missed out. We do call it out. It's not as if that we are blindly just writing something and then expecting people to read. We inform everyone that this is where it is mentioned, this is what was discussed. So we try to be as an organization, everyone tries to be communicating too much. We don't we try not to limit ourselves in terms of sending emails or messages. We just send it out. This is also something which is working well for us. In addition, I have had remote working experience previously, not at Gojek, but I was working as a freelancer before, as a PM for some startups in Sweden, Indonesia, Netherlands, and this is something which I learned firsthand as well, that for any remote team, what's the thing which is the most important is your documentation, how detailed it is, how does it call out assumptions, and tries to get everyone involved rather than just touching upon points and then leaving it for your team to assume. So this is something which is we are trying to do at Gojek as well. We put everything down in our documents. So yeah, I guess I have touched upon all the points, and I believe we are on time as well. Uh,
Cool.
let's.
Yes. Thank you a lot for your sharings, because it's a great experience to work in like this massive team like Gojek. It's yeah, it's a really cool. So let's check with you some questions from our viewers. I think you can open questions and maybe choose like 3 questions, and yeah, and
Sure.
let's answer on these questions. And after our meetup, I will send you some other questions from our participants, and you can write maybe some of your answers, and yeah, and we'll send your sharings to participants of our community. Yeah.
Sure. So should I look at the questions in the Zoom chat window?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's check in Zoom chat.
All right. There's one question that Vaibhav has asked about how do you define MAUs and DAU for each of your offering? How do you tie that with your ARR? So at Gojek, MAUs are defined in terms of, I mean, it again depends on the kind of metric that we're looking at, and the kind of product that we want to look at. Usually, we define it in terms of any transaction that a user has done on the platform. It could be either for booking a ride or booking a food order or sending something across to a user via P2P sending mechanism that we have on the application. So that's how we look at MAUs and DAUs. There's another question that Arabi has asked: for such massive team who work remotely, how to do connect, or what tools do you use to check everything in checks? So like I mentioned, we do extensive documentation on Google Docs. That's one. We use Zoom calls for or all of our meetings. We use Jira primarily for tracking all the tasks that are pending, mostly on the engineering side. For other business functions, they have a bunch of other tools that they're using. Some of them are using Rike, Favro. So those are tools that we are using. There's one question that Mohammad Ibrahim has asked about: how do you see Nadeem Makarem departure from Gojek? So Nadeem, he has actually gone to even a bigger role. So Nadeem started this company to create a massive impact through technology in Indonesia, and it has actually done that really well. Gojek contributes to more than 3 billion or 1% of Indonesia's GDP annually. That's just massive. And now Nadeem has actually moved on to being Minister of Education and Culture at Indonesia, which is even a bigger step to massively transform Indonesia. So there's a huge opportunity in Indonesia in terms of students learning, students adopting education as students adopting technology as a career option. So that is something which is Nadeem is trying to focusing on, trying to solve the education problem through technology, through the experience that he has gained while at Gojek, and implementing it across Indonesia through government channels. So yeah,
cool.
Those are three questions. I can actually take one more question. It's about Ashwani asked about experimentation framework that we have.
Okay.
So
yeah.
We actually built. Yeah. So this is something that we built in house. We use CleverTap as our analytics tool, as well as we run some campaigns through CleverTap. But what we have done through our in-house experimentation framework is we are creating segments of users, and based on the filters that we have created in-house, as well as not just segments. We also have some time periods, and for any experiment, what's more important is that you always have an experimentation group and a control group, so that you are always measuring your experiments objectively, and there is no doubt about it. So all of our experiments will always be measured like that, and we always look at statistical significance of our results. So this in-house experimentation framework helps us do that. And I don't think that there is any similar tool which exists in the market at the moment. So
I see. So we also have in-house development of about our analytics and all of this A/B experiments, for example.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all, I guess.
Okay.
I hope the session was useful, and yep, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And after your speech, you can answer some questions in the chat. And right now, we will invite our next speaker. And thank you so much for your time. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so let's move to our next speaker. It will be Alankar Sudarsan. He's a digital innovation consultant and helping brands to transform in digital medium to solve real life needs. And he successfully set up and run digital innovation lab in Decathlon. And he will share with us ideas in product UX and growth also. So Alankar, please. Hi, can you hear us?
Hello.
Yeah,
we're audible.
Nice. Yep. Yeah. So you can start your video and let's go.
Yep, sure. I'll just share my screen.
Okay.
So how are you doing, Michael? How has it been so far?
Nice. Yes, thank you. So today is really glad to see a lot of participants. I'm really glad to see a lot of our speakers. So I think it's good.
Just finding it.
Yeah. So share screen is like a green button. On bottom panel, and you can share screen and choose your browser or maybe all screen sharing. Nice.
Yeah. Is it visible?
Not right now. No.
Can you see my screen?
No. So you push like share button. Let's try one more time maybe.
Yeah.
Usually it works. Yeah. We can see your phone screen. Yep. And
is it visible?
Yeah, I can see myself right now. So you can choose. Yeah, we will see your deck. Nice.
In just a minute. Sorry for that.
Okay, no worries.
Yep.
We see you. Yeah. So let's start.
Yeah. Cool. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alankar here from India. So I've been invited to this community 12 hours before, and it was like, within a short period of time, I came up with a lot of ideas to share with the community. First of all, it's great to see everyone, like-minded people. So meanwhile, I was exploring the internet. I just got to know Alibaba has surpassed $30 billion in a single day sale, which is humongous. $30 billion is not a simple thing, and that too in a single day. Why I'm pulling this information is because the customer demand and the purchase behavior of the customer is changing every day, with challenging requests from the customers. They need it right now, and they have to solve it right now. This has become a big challenge for the brands to actually solve the customer needs right at the moment and where they want. And it pushed the brands to, transform digitally. And every other brands out there was like trying to digitally transform. Decathlon is also invited me to build a digital innovation lab for them. The reason because Decathlon is a sport sport company where they sell sport goods for the users, but a beginner in cricket would not know how to buy a gear for a cricket. The intermediate guy in basketball uh, would be struggling, what to buy and how to buy. Is this a real good product that I can go for it? So Decathlon decided to take it their platform to build a platform which is like, solve all the answers and the questions which the customer has during their purchasing journey. So this is where I came into the picture. And when I started to set up the company, I had six things in my mind, which is, you know, the objective which we were set during the initial days was to build the validated needs and build the products efficiently, and give the ownership to everyone, not just the one who is actually directing it, and experiment driven product development and experience at heart and omnipresent. These were the objectives we draw ourselves before we were building the innovation lab for Decathlon. So I'm going to present you the 10 steps which actually we followed during the time, and these are the process which we actually worked on. And you can also get this process if you really like it. And yes, here we go. So starting with hypothesis, every single hypothesis is behind an idea. So how do we start it, where do we start it, how to validate this idea? So we started to believe in MVP, which is like we want to build it really really uh, viable product which doesn't pull any cost out of it. So every feature we started to believe that this will change the game forever. And after that, once we get an idea, we started to look into the product market fit. So everyone can visualize an idea, everyone can present an idea, everyone can develop an idea, but does that idea is like really the market need, or someone will use it, or someone is ready to pay? All these answers are like answered by the research methods which we carry out when we start to validate this idea. So once we know there is some usage, there is a market need for that, we go to the next step of researching out why this idea is more important, why this idea is like need of the moment. Does this anyone willing to pay for it? Does the idea already exists, like a competitor is already doing, or shit, there is no need in the market? Like, to to be informed with all these questions, we carry out the detailed research out in the market. And then once we get to know that this is the actual product or the idea that we can be built, we started to give a form. Form as in an idea is an idea until we get it out to the paper. So this is where we bring in the entire team, not just the designers, but the entire team. So we actually set up a process of sprint where the entire team, which has like designers, engineers, marketers, sales, everyone come into the picture and draw their idea. So what do we do after that is we collect every sketches and then post it right in front of the board and ask the entire team to vote on it. So it doesn't have to be the designer who is only have to design it, and then the engineers have to be built it. Every single person has ownership towards expressing his own idea. So from there, once we get to know that this is the concept we are going behind, we just carry out the research. Let's say we have two concepts of A and B, but then we don't know which one to build it, but how to validate it. So there is a term which we arrived at: get out of the building. So get out of the building is nothing but going and talking to the real users. You know, you are building for the user and you are not talking to the real user, then there is no purpose of building the product, right? Or any idea. So we had a term whenever we drew a wireframe or a concept or an idea or a feature, we take it to the users, we meet them where they are, and then, you know, carry out research with them, and then understand what their needs are, what are the problems they are facing it, and how do they, how the idea is, like, you know, really solving their problems. So while talking to them, we try to kill the bias, which is, like, you know, any person who creates or, you know, uh, draws an idea as a already bias towards it. But when we go to talk to the users, we should kill the bias before talking to them. If we do that, we can actually got to know, like, you know, a lot of informations and the pain points behind the users. So once we get all the data, it's time to come back to the office, and then, you know, it's, this is the planning stage. This is what we call the bridging the teams, like, you know. So we ask every designers, engineers who is like about to create and develop this feature. We set up a war room, and then we sort of, you know, discuss about every micro things that we want to, you know, build it. That's where we call it as architecture planning. So architecture planning is nothing but how the design and engineering can cohesively work together. So let's say a person is trying to book a Uber, and his data is, like, you know, not really up to the mark. So how do we deliver the need of the user, which I actually wanted? So considering all these conditions, situations, and environment, the engineering team will, you know, plan for how the API should work and how the call should be made, on what condition, on what situation the users are in. Same wise goes for the design. When we conceptualize it and then work on the design system. So design system is nothing but building the components, breaking into minute things, and then putting it back into the product to scale it, improve the performance of the whole product. So planning all this right at the moment is very important. It goes to the both design and tech. Once we actually come back to the agreed point, then we start to build that this is where we want to go. So what are the points that we have planned out? What are the things that we have collected so far? We actually wanted to document it, but during the initial stages of the work, we didn't document it, and it was a experience which I wanted to share. In the document, every product manager should trust, and then this is some critical stage that we should not be missed upon anything. So this is where we document everything from the pixels to the API flow of how each and every call will be working, what is the acceptance criteria, etc., etc., etc. So document became the centralized tool for us. And one important thing is, when we write a document, try to make it interesting as in someone who should read it. I see a lot of documents I've written in the past, but mostly it was not read or taken out during the phase of development. So the more we make it interesting, the more developers will start to read it. Once we document it, it's time to build. So we had the process of mini demos. Let's say a feature is taking a time of 2 weeks to build, um, but then we don't wait for the 2 weeks to get over and then review it at end of the day. So what we did is we sort of break it into mini demos every 4 days. Let's say it's taking 14 days to build a feature, so we sort of break it into every 4 day we get a review. No matter what is there in developed or what is there has been worked, we make it mandatory as a mini demo, and then the entire team came into the picture and then discuss about it. And whatever the queries, suggestions, help which are required has been solved right there, and then more. Trust me, this actually works because there was no surprising thing at the end of the 14 days. So this is where we set the KPIs for what to do and where to go and how to build it. So once the data has been built, now it's time to ship it out and then measure it. So one culture which we built in the digital innovation lab is data informed. Out there are like many terms are called like data driven, which we wouldn't want to go, because we want to give a human touch to the product by the information we are getting from the data. So every single decision that has been taken inside digital innovation lab is behind data informed. So with the tools of analytics and A/B testing and usability testing, we sort of get all the quantitative and qualitative data from the users, offline and online, and we put it out, map it out to the sketch, and then every decision has been taken from there. I can discuss this detail about if anyone wants to know about this more. So after doing all this process, what do we achieve? So during the initial 6 months of the time, for the first 3 months, it was real discussions and strategies. We used a lot of things, and there was like huge success. There were like failures. There were like somewhere we are happy, somewhere we are broken. But end of the day, the team was strong. We believed in what we did, and the process actually started to work. One thing I want to share is like wherever whichever the product we build, if we miss the single step in the between, the entire process will be broken. So consider every single step of the process you create and make sure the entire team is followed. So when we finished the process, and after 6 months, we saw the huge numbers which has been displayed here, which is like 60% we reduced the communication gap between the teams. There was cases actually when designers produce concept something, and then the outcome was something. So we sort of like with the help of the process, many micro communications and tools like sharing the mobile screen or like window screen, which is detailed out with the specs. So it helps to reduce the communication gap between the team. Everyone increased the delivery on time, and ownership was throughout the game, starting from research to the execution. Every single person had a ownership. A PM has to be answerable to anyone who is raising a question. An engineer can raise a question to anyone in the team. A designer can answer a question to anyone in the team. Once the documentation is decentralized, this is something easily anyone in a team can do it. So in 3 months, we have revamped the entire platform, and documentation became the tool of the time. Finally, we saw 38% increase in data informed decisions. So This is what we have done in the Digital Innovation Lab. Uh, digital transformation is right at the need of the moment, and users are like, with the, like I said before, with the increasing demand from the customers and changing constantly of purchasing behaviors. uh, I'm helping brands out there to, successfully build products out there. So you can connect with me through my email ID for any queries. I'm both consulting and I'm looking out for a job change also. So even if you want, you can reach out to me. So right now, after building digital innovation lab for Decathlon, I said, why should we, do it in house itself? And there are like multiple brands out there who are like really trying to transform digitally. And I said myself, I can go out there and help. And that is where I started consulting from. So here I am, and yep, this is all about it.
Cool. Thanks a lot. It's really nice achievements in Decathlon, in changing, in digitalization. It's really cool. And thank you a lot for this useful, like step by step, some checklist for checking a product and so on. Yeah. Thanks a lot for you. For this.
Anyone, any questions?
Yeah, so here we have some questions. I can read these questions. So first question is about idea validation. So can you recommend maybe, or can you say something about your experience? For example, how many users do you meet? How do you build product validation? Is it mockups or is it developing a product? Yeah.
Mostly, let's say we are going to build a pencil, right? So actually, a pencil can be of a different shape, but the idea is to build a pencil. So we sort of, take this idea out into the market first, and then see what is the need of the pencil right at the moment. Do the users really want the pencil, or do they want the pen? So once we know that these are the pencil and these are the requirements and the quality of the pencil they are looking for, we come back and then we concept the pencil, draw it out, sketch it out, and then create a prototype out of it, and then take it again back to the users, to the place where they actually use it, and then see how it goes. This is a repetitive cycle which we have to, carry out back and forth until and unless we arrive at a final, set of requirements, that this is where the product can be built along the way.
Cool, yeah. And we will have time for one more question. And all other question I will send to you. And also you can write some answers, for example, in a chat. So the last question for you is about some analytical things. So what the quantitative methods do you use before feature implementation? So, for example, you need to estimate how many users will be affected by this new feature or product change, and and how your conversion rate will change. What do you usually use? How do you working with these? Because
So the question is, how do we carry out?
So what methods do you use before launch of a new feature? Yeah, what helps you to make some estimations maybe?
So once we built a feature, we take it out to the users. We actually draw a line that this X feature will perform at this amount of time, and then we set the KPI out there, and then we take it to the users. Quantitative research is all about collecting the number of feedbacks, polls, suggestions out there. We have a Opinion tool which is installed in the platform. So anyone who is using there, they can fill out what are the pain points, what are the problems they are facing while going through the flow. For example, checkout flow and things like that. And also we carry out a survey at end of every successful task. By collecting all these informations and data, we sort of arrive at the final stage, and we look out where are the loopholes, where are the fixes needed, and how to improve.
Cool.
So this is our methods of doing it.
Mm-hmm. So thanks a lot one more time for your sharings, for your presentation to our community. It's really glad to hear about your experience. It's a lot of achievements in Decathlon and in your experience. So thanks you one more time. And we will invite our next speaker. So we'll welcome Lisa Moore Wagner, product manager, Zatu TV streaming. And yeah, we'll wait for a few seconds. Yeah. Hi, Lisa. Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, nice to meet you. Yeah.
Nice to meet you too. Hi.
Okay, so you can say some words about yourself and let's start.
Yeah, let me share my screen.
Yep.
Where's the screen share when I'm in the
It's a green one button.
Oh, there we
Yeah.
go. All right. Okay. All right.
Cool.
So,
yeah, we'll see.
You can see my screen?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so my name is Lisa. I am a senior product manager focused mainly on growth and strategy. I work at Zatu. We do TV streaming. Today I'm going to talk about building a completely new product. So maybe it has happened to some of you before. Do let me know in the chat if you feel like it. That someone came up to you and said something along the lines of, I need you to build this new product for me. And then a lot of the time, we end up looking like this, right? I mean, I certainly have before. So to have a bit less of a freak out here, I will talk to you about the whole, it doesn't have to be intimidating. There's 6 steps that will help you to have a smooth start. And we're just gonna get right into it. These are the 6 steps. Thank you, everyone. This was my talk. I'm just joking. So you kind of want to do some discovery. You want to ideate, come up with ideas, prototype, validate, build and ship. Sounds easy enough, right? I think for a lot of you, this probably sounds familiar as well because they are based on methodologies like lean startup, agile, and design thinking. So you've probably come across these expressions and stages before. I think the secret ingredient to these is your team. So you also need an empowered team to actually be able to make the best out of all of these 6 steps. So looking at you as a product manager, or maybe an aspiring product manager, your most important skill in this whole thing, or skills, are communication and facilitation. So you don't need to be a designer, or you don't need to be a developer because you get those people on your team. But you need to make sure that you speak with everyone, that you communicate very clearly and openly, and that you facilitate all these steps that are happening. This can actually mean something very specific, like workshop facilitation, but it can also just mean in general facilitating the work, the processes, the progress in your day-to-day. So let's start finally building a product. Really, really simple starting point. If you don't know your customer, you can't deliver value to them. of like, I don't know, if someone tries to deliver a pizza, if they don't know where you live and what you want, you're not going to be happy with that pizza. So basically, that is why we do discovery. This part is super important. It can start out very high level with market research. So you have an overview of what's happening in the market, what are competitors doing, what is out there, what kind of technology is available for something that you would like to build. And then you have to dig deeper and look at, maybe you already have data because the company has already been around for a while, so you can analyze that data, or you can run some surveys to get some quantitative information about potential users. And then you also just want to go and talk to them and do some interviews and just sit down with a person that maybe already is your customer for another product or has never heard of you before, and just really get to know why they are doing things. Personally, I like jobs to be done as a framework. So I'm just going to throw out a few frameworks every now and then in this talk. I will not go into detail because some super duper smart people have come up with these, and you should probably just check out their videos. So I'll link you an article that I wrote that's basically a collection of links to all the frameworks and tools I'll be talking about. And then you can find and like drill down on all the things you get really interested in. Okay. So if you know your customer and you know which problem to solve, because you usually cannot solve all at once, you want to get into the next step. And for that one, use your team. They have an amount of experience and expertise that you could never, ever have on your own. It's just not possible. Not one person can know that much or experience that much. So you'd be basically insane if you wouldn't work with your team on this. And your team is, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say you're probably working in some sort of cross-functional team, or at least very closely with designers and developers, QA, sometimes data science, sometimes marketing, content strategy. Kind of depends on your product. Get those people together and come up with ideas together. One thing I don't mean when I say together is just get in a room and brainstorm like a bunch of crazy people. Because a lot of the time brainstorming actually doesn't work because you invite bias into your round. Maybe there's one person that's just really, really good with words and everyone's like, oh, that's the best idea, definitely. Or someone that just everybody likes. Or maybe there's a manager there, so it's like the highest paid person in the room's opinion matters the most. So there are a bunch of really cool things. I've run a few Google design sprints. If you've heard of those, they have a lot of activities and exercises in them that can help you to come up with ideas together alone. So you're in a room and you'll share back to each other, but the part where you actually think about the ideas, that's something you do on your own. And then you got to prototype that stuff, because the best idea is still that, an idea. So build something that you can put in front of a customer. And the only thing that's really important here is that you just need a realistic facade. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be as simple as paper. There are paper prototypes out there, and that will actually already help you to learn something. You can obviously also go higher fidelity and kind of build something in Vision and all those tools. That's usually easier if you have a designer to do that. I'm not a designer. I don't have a design background, so I'm not that familiar with these tools. So it takes me forever to try to build something in those. So what I've done in the past is actually just use Keynote or PowerPoint. Works just as well. And then you put it in front of your users because you are not your. This makes so much sense. This is so easy to use. It's perfect. I have to build and ship it straight away. Just not lose any time at all. And then you put it out there, nobody uses it, and you're just kind of like, wait, what? What happened? How did that happen? So put something in front of users. It's actually enough to do 5 user tests with a prototype that will already give you significant big patterns and an idea of did this idea work or did it not work at all? If it does work, or if it works sort of, you can iterate and make it better and test for another round. I've once had a really big and complex new product. So we actually did 3 rounds of iterations on our prototype before we even started building it, just to make sure that we're not doing anything crazy, because it was going to be a lot of effort to actually build these things. And that brings me to the next one, because now you know it's a good idea, you want to build it. And I like the expression of the minimum learnable product. I've heard that in a podcast by a product manager from Dropbox. I'm not going to try to butcher the person's name right now, but even the podcast is linked in the article, so listen to it. It's so interesting. And the minimum learnable product basically says, or the idea basically says, come up with the minimum set of functionalities that you need for a customer to use your product and for you to actually learn through that usage of that MLP. And that's usually enough. And it's really hard to come up with that. The word or the expression MVP has been thrown around a lot. That's why I like to kind of go with the MLP, because like the V, viable, people are like, what does that even mean? But it's also really hard to decide what goes in there and what doesn't. And for that, I really, really like something that is called the product definition canvas. A product studio named TWG from Toronto has come up with that, and they have one part in there. I think it's just called MVP features in their canvas. But basically what it does is it looks at what is my signature feature, which great example, Netflix, because most people know Netflix. That first screen, when you go into your Netflix, that's their signature feature, because that's where you find everything. This is your starting point. This is where you get your recommendations, where they also push stuff that's new. If that wasn't there, if you just had like a list of movies and TV shows, the experience just wouldn't be anything like it is now. And I'm fairly certain that if there was just a list, people probably wouldn't have loved it as much in the beginning. So that's their signature feature. Then there are core features. Those are the things that you need. So if you have a subscription model like Netflix does, you need user accounts. You need a login, you need password forgot functionality, and you need some kind of payment. Do you need notifications about new shows? Probably not. So all of those features that are kind of like, oh, that would be cool if we had this, they just go into other features. And if you build your first iteration, the very first version, you just completely ignore all the other features. Those are for later. Because otherwise you'll just be building and building and building for months, and then you'll never get anything out there. But you want to ship, because the best thing about a shipped product is that you get to collect real data and learn from it. Which kind of reminds me of the first step. Oh, wow. And also, you just ship your product. Look at that. Let's celebrate that for a moment. And basically what you do now is you don't need to build a new product, but you need to iterate, and the steps are the same. So you just start from the beginning. That's really all there is to it. So easy. We're all going to do that from now on without even breaking a sweat. So that were my 6 steps. So we discover, we ideate, we prototype, validate, build, and ship. I probably talk pretty fast because I have to run away at 30. So we have a moment to answer some questions now.
Okay, let's try. So thank you a lot for the speech. Yeah, it's really nice experience to do some new product. Yeah, it's absolutely other feelings. Yeah, when you're working with some old product and you created something from scratch, like new one with from 0 to 1. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, let's check some questions from our participants. How do you get the confidence that the feature is validated? How many users do you need to show a prototype to get some confidence?
So that's just 5 people. I'm a really, really big market research company, Nielsen Group. They have actually conducted studies on this, and they said the big patterns can be found after 5 interviews. So that takes a day.
Nice.
So everyone could do that.
So only one day, and you have some.
You have at least an idea if it's going to be amazing or terrible, and then you've only spent maybe a couple of weeks instead of a few months on this. So that's good.
Cool. The next question is about, do you have maybe some experience in B2B products, how to conduct user research here?
Yes, I do. I've done a bunch of different B2B products. It is a little harder because if you're in B2C, you can just basically go outside, grab the next person that you see and ask them questions. It is a little harder for B2B. It depends a little bit on the company where you work. If it's already a little bigger, they might already have a few customers that you could reach out to. So that's something I've done in the past, talk to existing customers. But you can also, I've found that recruiting interviewees and also user testers works really well on social media. So you can either go to Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn, and you can get very specific with your targeting on there. So basically what you do is you run an ad campaign targeted at these very specific people in a certain location, maybe. Like I'm in Berlin, so I might say, oh, I only want to show this ad to people in Berlin that are small business owners in this and that industry. And luckily, Facebook always takes all of our data, so they actually can find these people fairly easily. And that way you can actually just show an ad and maybe offer something in return because they give you some of their time. So what I've done a lot is just offer them a €50 Amazon voucher, and then people are pretty happy to tell you about themselves because people like to talk about themselves. So that usually works.
Cool. So we have a time for a last question. So this question is about, can you maybe recommend some tools for market research in discover stage?
Market research, literally just Google. That's what I usually do. I Google things, and then I sometimes you end up on Statista pages. So it's just like statistic information data. It kind of depends on what I'm looking for. But also, generally, I want to say, do just enough research. Don't go overboard, especially not on the market research. Obviously, Google within your industry, somehow find out who are your competitors that are in the same market as you. Maybe go one step bigger, who are competitors that are maybe not in the same location, but they do the same thing, so I can learn and get ideas from them. But other than that, I would always concentrate more on the user research, on the interview part, than on the market research.
Cool. So thank you one more time for your sharing with our community. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I can probably just send you my my deck, and then you can send it out to people, and then they can.
Cool. Yeah, let's do it this way. And if we get some more questions, I will send it also to you.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Okay, let's move on. And I will invite our next participant. Our next speaker is Juhi Parekh, product manager. Hi, can you hear us? Yeah, please unmute your microphone. And yeah, we can hear you. Nice.
Okay, great.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so yeah, I think you can say some words about you, about your experience, and then let's start our topic.
Yes, sure. So I'm not as experienced as all the speakers who spoke before me. So I'm here to motivate all the uh, attendees here who want to move into product management. I'm fairly young. I'm a 2016 engineering graduate from India. Um, I can tell you a bit about my entire journey and when I decided product management was my calling or something that I want to pursue for the majority of my career.
Cool.
Yeah. So while I was in college, I got introduced to analytics. Post which I interned at this big Fortune 500, like this big unicorn in India, which usually helps Fortune 500 clients make decisions using data. I interned there, picked up analytical skills, and then I made a very conscious decision to work in a very small startup, like with some 40 odd people. And it had employees from all nationalities. Like there's a British designer, an Australian coder, a couple of Americans. There are some social impact fellows, and the amazing part was that this small startup was closely working with the government and philanthropic organizations to help them make critical decisions using data. Stuff like how do you reframe, like is the education policy in India, the Right to Education Act, effective or not? What is the dropout rate in schools as of today? How do you improve the health and infrastructure systems in India? And these are all big decisions and very impactful. And I was fortunate to work there, and my whole mindset was that, oh, I want to solve big problems. And I was working on 20 GB worth of data of 12 years of education and trying to figure out, okay, which state needs more teachers. And it was a lot of fun, but it was tough because I was fairly new. I was a novice and a millennial, as they would call it. But then I worked on some data from their product. So it was a services as well as a product company, and their product was essentially a data collection app, which would work even without Wi-Fi in remote areas or internet, because essentially remote areas in India do not have that internet connectivity, and it was multilingual. So I literally analyzed data in Hindi and I found bugs in their product. And those bugs led to rebuilding the roadmap of the product. And that's when my entire mindset changed. That, okay, like even though I'm like crunching numbers and solving and using multiple data sets, I'm only consulting people to make some decisions. But here I'm building something that will then be used by millions. And that's how I figured out that, okay, maybe this is something I want to do, this is something I want to pursue. And I was also exploring UX at that point of time, just building like the entire process of user research, um, user building the user journey map, doing persona creation, then making wireframes, low fidelity, high fidelity. And I was just going through the entire process, and I thought, okay, so the question I had was, okay, I like data, I like UX, and I know I want to do something related to product. Now, what do I do? which way do I go? So then I googled it and I found, okay, wow, there's something which has an intersection of everything, and that's what I want to do. And I then I figured out, okay, what are the skills I need to build for this? That's how my thought process worked. I made a very conscious decision to build my analytical skills for the first 2 years of my career. um, I was fortunate to work with one of the best data scientists in the country, who was also the CEO of the first company that I was a part of. And we went on to um, the product that I was working on was literally like an automated analysis product. And that went on to win NASSCOM Emerge 50. NASSCOM is like this institution where they generally acknowledge emerging products which are disruptive of some sort, of some nature. and I went on. So we went on to win NASCOM Emerge 50, and then I moved to Olacabs. So Olacabs is the biggest competitor of Uber in India. It is valued at 6.5 billion US dollars. There are approximately, like, I think we do 42 million bookings a month and have 12 to actually 20 million active customers monthly. So it's pretty big. It has more market share in most places in India, and the problems are exciting, especially in tech and logistics and everywhere. And I was responsible for the entire customer billing, uh, driver billing, and the driver payments experience. So something that Kshitij mentioned about the cash out feature. So that's something that I built for Ola. Like we call it the on demand payment. These are very, I could totally relate to the kind of what he was talking about, impact and scale. And you build something small and it reaches millions. That's the beauty of working in India, and especially in the emerging technology center, because what happens is that since there are so many edge cases here, so how companies think of it as, okay, if we solve it for India, we can easily implement it in US and Europe, because the crowd is a little more technologically advanced, and there are more edge cases in India, so let's fix it here. And Ola used that and then expanded to Australia, UK, New Zealand, and I was working on all the geographies, so I had a good sense of, okay, this is how the drivers in UK think, this is how the drivers in India think. And it was a lot of fun. Do you have any question?
Not right now. You can keep, yeah.
I thought you were gonna ask something. Okay, sure. Um, yeah. So my literally my job was to, so there's a fare that you get when you book a cab. So what is that fare? What determines that fare? What goes into making that fare? To what part of that fare is passed on to the driver? How does the driver understand his earnings? How often should the driver get paid? How does the driver understand his payment? How can he pay into the platform, since there are a lot of cash, right? So there's this huge concept of receivables, which is essentially credit risk, to put it in normal terms. And all of these very exciting difficult problems was stuff I worked on. I also worked on the pooling team. Like, so you have Uber Pool, where you can pool cab rides and go from point A to point B. So similar to that, we have Ola Share. And how do you optimize for multiple things like profitability, sharing, and the demand? Like, you want consumers to convert, you don't want them to. So what should the price point be like? How can you use data science to optimize these routes, and uh, basically manage your demand and supply? So I worked on very interesting geospatial data. So that's where my analytical skills helped me tremendously, because I was good with R, I was good with Excel, I was good with SQL. I could pull data, I could plot it, I could see the demand patterns, and then build a product out of it, where I said, okay, hey, maybe we should build some specific location specific product, which is now becoming the location platforms in the company. So and location platform is very important to leverage so many consumer patterns, either from the demand side or the supply side. And the so in basic terms, all these companies are, all they're trying to do is just match your demand and supply. That's it. So, and what are the different types of other products or tools you can use to help enable that? So yeah, that's been my journey so far. I have around 3.5 years of experience, but feels like a lifetime. but love the problems. I'd be joining Amazon soon as a product manager, and I'm happy to take any questions and people might have on how to navigate into product management, or where can they study, or what are the resources and stuff like that.
Cool. So thank you. It's a really great journey from analytical to product management. Yeah. Cool. And yeah, and I have a question. So maybe can you share with us what was the harder one thing when you start working as a product manager? Because I think first month as a product manager, when you change your professional, it a little bit hard. So
Yeah.
how do you work with this? What helps you personally to working with this? Can you share some your experience, some your ideas about like first months as a product managers, and maybe some suggestions to our audience? Maybe some guys also want to move from like analytical or marketing position to product manager. So what can help for them? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Very good question, actually. So I was fairly young, very open-minded, and I moved into the product team. I was my first stint. So I was given. I was asked to. There was one metric that I had to essentially figure out. Like what is driving this metric? What is moving that metric? Tell us all about it. So I would listen to like numerous calls from the driver partners like daily, and I remember that I created an entire deck which and so I basically take a twofold approach. There's quantitative data and then there's qualitative data. So the qualitative data will help me understand my customers, will help me understand the pain points, will help me understand what they need, and that's the gap I'll try to fill. So it's more of a sensibility, like the right brain part. Then there's the quantitative data, which will help me understand my product, which will help me understand how are the metrics moving, which will help me understand what goes into making the metric. So there are input metrics, there are output metrics. And yeah, so I take this twofold approach every time whenever I attack a problem. And I came up with a deck. I remember I told them, okay, these are the type of calls that you're getting, these are the pain points. I also put voice of drivers, voice of customer, so to say. So people who are looking at the deck get an idea of, okay, this is how they are thinking, this is what is paining them. So the drivers would say that I don't know when I get my payment, I get my payment too late, or they say things like that, and I don't get better assistance. So that then you break down that entire discovery problem into realistic like problems either. So then you can break it down into the action steps, so to say. You can create objectives from it, and then the issues could be operational, the issues could be tech, the issues could be experience, and essentially that those are the problems that you have identified, and then from the problems you map it to what are the possible initiatives you can take to solve for those problems. After, of course, diving deep into the problem to validate, looking at numbers, talking to stakeholders, that okay, am I thinking right, checking your hypothesis, and then definitely designing an experiment, sizing it, prioritizing it, and then evaluating it firstly. So but what I remember is that I remember my director telling me, oh, we should give this to the design team. And I thought, okay, so that's a good so I think the small things that you do to build your confidence in the beginning while moving and transitioning into a product role is very helpful. And also I would definitely advise this um, to people that we think that menial work is not important, but in the beginning, even finding a bug or analyzing data to then fix some part of the logic, that entire going through that entire journey gives a lot of satisfaction. And those small steps teach you so much that you can then build a full-fledged product and huge feature that will impact the business.
Okay, thanks. Let's check two more questions. So, for example, question about maybe you can suggest some resources to study product management. Maybe you use some or use yeah, right now some resources. Yeah.
So when I wanted to move into product management, I read this book, Product Management for Dummies, I think, and to actually figure out what product management is, what program management is, where it fits into the business. And that was quite good. To crack interviews, I refer to Decode and Conquer, Cracking the PM Interview. These are all very good books, very renowned, will help you get into the product thinking mindset. Third, I feel there are some blogs. There's some really good blogs like Stellar Peers. Definitely follow those. Do mock interviews to crack PM roles. And yeah, just being active on Medium, like reading some good content is helpful.
Cool. Okay, let's check the last question. So I think it will be a question about. I think you remember about your interview from analytical to product manager. Can you maybe share with us some things that help you on this interview? Because I think it's a little bit hard when you're talking with the manager and he can say, you do not have any product manager experience. So
actually, I'll tell you what. I used to make these dashboards when I was an analyst on R Shiny. R Shiny is essentially a tool, analytical. Like you make these pretty dashboards with maps all over and demand patterns on top of it, and then you can filter it. Like you filter it for a certain time period. You filter it for a city. So that's essentially a product that I'm creating for my stakeholders, and my stakeholders here would be program managers within the team. So for me, moving from analytics to PM was a very rigorous process. I had to give five interviews within my company itself, if just to move. And I remember all of them would ask me to rank myself in the following: stakeholder management, problem solving capabilities, customer research, and and everything, like the typical things, accountability. And I would give myself a 6. Sometimes if I was confident, I would give myself an 8. And then I'd say that I think I really need to improve on these, and these are the steps I'm taking to improve on these certain factors. But I remember showing my dashboard to a particular director, and I told him that, see, this is a product essentially, and this is what I've built. And then he asked me, then how do you iterate on it? And in a very simple things like, okay, a program manager tells me, oh, I want this feature where I can search in the map. I was like, okay, sure, I'll build that for you. So so like this, there's how, okay, she knows how to iterate, she knows how to build, and she can think from a customer perspective and take feedback. And so I had some idea of it because I would read. So yeah, I think doing my work helped me. I understand people who don't move from analytics or who haven't built stuff like this can have some problems, but yeah, that's how I convinced my manager to hire me as a PM.
Okay, thank you a lot for your sharings. It's a really nice journey. Yeah, and yeah, I hope you will be a really good product manager, and then senior product manager, and then chief product officer. I hope, yeah.
Soon enough.
Yeah, so have a good day. Thank you so much. Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Okay, and let's invite our last speaker for today. It's Craig Zingerlein, Chief Product Officer. Hi, Craig. Can you hear us?
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great.
Nice.
Is the connection okay?
Yep. So yeah, I think you can say some words about you, and let's go.
All right. It looks like, of course, they're doing work in my building here today. So my network's become unstable and I switched offices. So we'll see. Let me share my screen.
It's a good green button. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Let me know when you see it. And you see the full screen?
Yeah, full screen.
Okay, awesome. So, yeah, so I'm Craig Zingerlein. I'm going to talk about how to become a kick-ass growth product manager. Here are some of the companies that I've been fortunate to work with or for. I'm currently the Chief Product Officer at Sandbox. And I'll tell you a little bit about our business model as we get rolling. But I've got experience kind of across the B2C and B2B board. I've been a multi-time founder myself and have been through kind of a lot of the ups and downs of startup growth and startup failure as well. And really what I'm going to dig into is some approaches on how we should be looking at product development as growth product managers. So I'll dig right in. I would define growth really as connecting value. And so growth starts by ensuring that the product that you're building, that you have live, provides value to both your customers or your clients, as well as to your own customer, all the way through the customer life cycle. And that's a little bit different than maybe what a traditional view of a product or a role may be. Whereas traditional PMs will likely own a product or a set of features. A growth product manager is typically going to own metrics across the organization. So it's a really metrics driven, as well as feature driven mindset, but it's much more heavy kind of on the data and analytics side traditionally. Growth PMs are going to normally lead experimentation efforts across the company or organization. And most importantly, I think they're going to live just like a product manager at the intersection of many different departments, sometimes with competing interests. In some cases, the growth team or the growth PM may actually also own demand gen or customer acquisition. One of the gigs that I had, I actually owned marketing. So I own marketing and growth and growth product management. So it really depends on the company size, industry, and team structure. But growth PMs may be diving pretty deep into all things marketing, which we'll get into in a little bit. So just to visualize some of the user flow and touch points that the PM may have. So users kind of flow through the process. The growth PM touches marketing, product, and engineering, where they'll likely have a lot of ownership over kind of the ideation and deployment of features and products. But then this intersection with customer success or operations, other departments within your company, all of those folks are coming up with ideas and generating ideas that you as both a PM and then a growth PM are going to be looking at. So this is where it starts to diverge a little bit from what a traditional product manager may look like. The growth PM will probably own part of or all of the pirate metrics. So acquisition, which is getting people to your site, activation, which is getting them to do the thing that you want them to do, retention, which is obviously getting them to come back and experience that product value over time, hopefully over a long period of time, revenue, if you're monetarily focused, and then referrals, which is basically becomes a loop going back to the top of funnel. So your referral becomes a loop back to acquisition. And so that's the area where the growth PM will really spend a lot of time is kind of looking at each of these stages of that pirate metric funnel. Okay, so why focus on growth-based product management? Well, because most startups fail, usually not because of bad products, but normally because of unvetted features, products, poor marketing, or market-related issues. And these numbers are incredibly sobering. So in 2018, CB Insights, which is a research company, put together they interviewed 101 startups that had failed. And these are the reasons that they came up with. I think I see product on here one time. In 2006, so going way back, Paul Graham had put together 18 mistakes that kill startups. Again, if you spend some time on this list, it's not a lot of product talk here. So when you crunch that data, and I've anecdotally got my own stories about this, 74% of startup failures had something to do with growth. So it's just critically important. Okay, so how does the growth PM change this? I like to say by doing the right thing, but what is the right thing? It's really ensuring that the right thing is built at the right time. a lot of the previous guests have talked about this, which has been fantastic. So I think there's a shift in focus now in terms of not just building stuff. For a long time, it was let's build stuff, let's figure out the fastest way to build things, let's build really great things. It's simply not enough with the market penetration of all these products that are out there and the competition that's come up. So the growth PM really can look at metrics and measurement that are tied to that feature and product development and make better decisions faster. Again, though, the growth PM is going to look at both stakeholders. So whereas a traditional PM may be only focused on the customer, the growth PM actually has to take the business needs in mind too. And at each iteration, they have to be able to add value to both sets of those stakeholders. And again, that experimentation and iteration is going to be considered core in the growth product management world. So how do we typically build features or products? Well, everybody's got tons of ideas. We got an amazing idea. We think something's going to move the needle. So we build. This feature is going to take 3 sprints. It's not that big of a deal. And we launch it and we're like, we're going to rake it in. And so it didn't work. So like a month later, we say, okay, well, we just got to build one more thing. This update's really going to move the needle. So, okay, 2 more sprints this time. We need to add a couple things. We need to make some changes. We're just going to get it done. Okay, now we launch and boom, this is going to be it. No, like usually we end in disappointment or failure. I will raise my hand and say, I've been here many, many, many times. Okay, so what are you supposed to do then as a growth product manager? I would urge you to really think about the process and the approach by which you're building features and products. So one proposal is, similar to what some of the other guests have talked about, really validating that need and the discovery with real users. And getting simple features or products out there really early is important so that you can iterate quickly and you build those feedback loops almost instantaneously. And when you do that from the start, you're typically going to build better products that have more definition that you're going to be able to move faster on because you validated the need with real customers. And then also starting with a hypothesis-driven approach is really where I think a solid growth PM will kind of universally adopt this methodology and see really great results. So an example of a hypothesis is by doing or not doing something, we believe that something else will be impacted by that thing, right? So it's just a simple thought process, comes from the science world. Many of us use these already. The next thing is that PMs in general, and I think specifically growth PMs, but also I would urge all PMs to give more thought to marketing. So at the product level, ask yourself some questions. Why do we need this thing? Who benefits from it? What might this detract from? Which is not something that we commonly think about because we're tending to move forward, but each and every release may actually have unintended consequences. There might be detractors from that release. So think about those in advance if you can. Focus on the goal for the release and then focus on that measurement piece. And then what's the simplest way that we can validate this idea that we've got? Also be mindful of what I would call other work. So other work is work that's outside of the view of just product and engineering. So who do I need to support this feature? Who else in the organization? Do I need to write content for it? Emails? Am I building drip campaigns? These are things that creep up on you as the PM, usually late in the game, and it really irritates the other teams involved. What other parts of our marketing funnel might this change? How are users going to learn about this feature? And what happens if this rollout fails? Like we spend a bunch of time building something and it fails. Do we have a plan to roll that back? Are we comfortable rolling it back? Do we have too much buy-in to this thing to say, even if it fails, it tanks our metrics, we're going to pull the plug on it? And in most cases, the answer is no. So you keep shipping more and more, and then all of a sudden you've got a bunch of technical debt. So this is, these are 5 or 6 questions out of many, many that you should be asking yourself before you go into the planning process. So the concept of growth-led product development really starts with experimentation at the core. And the way I often talk about this is through the lens of step functions of growth. So you basically climb this ladder of multiple iterations where you're starting really, really small, or you've done nothing, and then you're moving to this world where you're just optimizing through incremental improvements. And so I'll give you some examples of some stuff we're doing here at Sandbox, which are really interesting. So Sandbox is a digital to physical letter product where our customers are friends and family members of military recruits that go to boot camp. Okay, so during boot camp, those recruits lose their phones for 6 to 10 weeks. It's a big shock to the system to lose your phone for 10 weeks. And using our platform, you can send letters overnight to those recruits that we actually print out, and we bulk ship them. So we get really great pricing, and we get them to the recruit overnight for 20% of the cost that it would take outside of using us. So if you're going to use like FedEx alone, it costs you like $20, whereas with us, it might be $4. And we sell bundles. So we sell anywhere from a single letter purchase to a bundle of 70 letters, and there's different price points along the way. So we had built out this MVP promo code system thinking that we had some anecdotal evidence that that customers may be motivated or activated to purchase more if we could use some discounting. So we had some anecdotal evidence. We did have to build a tiny feature to support even our MVP. So we did that. We're a company at scale, so we could afford to do that. So we did that, and then we said, okay, well, because we're working on the revenue side, we don't want to risk allowing just any old customer in our funnel to see the discounts. Like, what we want to do is we want to really constrain this system so that there's no risk of tanking the revenue for a day or a week or a month, and then that has huge business impact. So we built some constraints into the test. So we had a hypothesis that said by leveraging discounts for existing customers, we can increase revenue for a test cohort compared to our control. Okay, so in the 0 to 1 step function game, we went from not having this capability to having it. And we wanted to simply validate that original hypothesis and set up a test. So we decided to discount our what was our second most popular bundle, the 3-letter bundle. We thought that would be an interesting place to start. So we manually picked a cohort of people to put into the test. Again, these were people that had already purchased our platform, using our platform. We set a very strict time frame. We started with a week, and we pulled that cohort of users into a test group. So small group of people who had purchased before, we're going to try to get them to buy the 3-letter bundle for a discount. We put them into a test group. We ran this campaign. We are not looking for statistical significance yet at this point. We want some direction. We want some directional signal that we're on to something or we're not. So this kind of flies against what a lot of traditional PMs will say around statistical significance, or what a data scientist may say. For us, and for a lot of the 0 to 1, it literally is just getting some direction. Okay, so this is our baseline. This is where we started at. So on the left, you've got the number of letters, and on the right, you've got the percentage of buyers who buy that letter. So 70% bought the single letter, 18.6% purchased the 3-letter bundle, and then 11.3% bought the bundles that were bigger than 3. Again, we go up to 70. So this is our control. This is our starting point. We ran our first test on the discount bundle 3. And you notice what happened is that we successfully got more people to buy the 3-letter bundle, but we shifted the behavior of purchasing. And what ended up happening is when we measured the revenue impact for that cohort, we were actually down 5%. So in some ways the test won, but it didn't impact the revenue the way we thought. So it was a failure. So we went back to the drawing board. We ran another one with different language and a couple different changes. Same thing happened, only worse. So we fail. But what's interesting is that we are getting people to take the intended action. It's just having an unintended consequence of the volume of purchasers at that single letter must have dropped, or the distribution of the revenue across the product suite fell. So again, a failure. So we looked at it and we said, okay, well, we can move the behavior up the price matrix. That's a really cool thing. But what we made on those larger purchases were lost due to that overall volume. So yeah, we considered it a failure. But we took another look and we said, okay, what else can we do without changing the product? So we're going to spend 0 engineering points on this. What else can we do? I said, okay, well, I think we're ready to take on a little bit more risk. We can actually move the needle. Let's try something with our single letter purchase and see what happens. So at this point, because we're starting to go to that next iteration, again, our tests were failures, but we knew that we thought that there was a way we could really positively influence these tests. We thought about the team. So at this point, if you've got a data scientist or a data analyst, you start to pull them in, right? This is becoming less directional and more scientific. If you've got a design team, you might want to add some more polish to the test or experiment. You may want to test with messaging. So the 0 to 1 game is really low fi, low risk. This next iteration, you're starting to bake it a little bit more. So you're getting a little bit more process heavy and sophisticated. So this is where we're at on that ladder. Okay, so we tested $1 off that single bundle purchase. And you can see that something very similar happened where even though we didn't drive the discount on the single letter like we thought we were going to, the distribution worked out. So just having that promo at that massive volume of customers who were hitting, that were getting the promo for the $1 off, they ended up buying more larger purchases, which is completely mind-boggling, but it's just the way it happened. We would have never predicted that. So we changed the behavior, but not in the ways that we thought we were going to. But we chalked that up as a win. Okay, so we thought if we could do that, we could probably do more. So we started to scale this up. And so for some tests, it may be increasing the visibility of the cohort to 50% or even 80 or 90% of your audience. But you can start to think of new ways to build in and test the hypotheses at this point. If you fail here in this next iteration, or if you win, you've probably got some statistical significance that really tells you whether or not you had a viable idea or a feature. And if you succeed, maybe you've got a feature or a backlog item. So for us, what this actually meant, again, we didn't do any additional development work. For us, it meant looking at that risk equation again. So we said, what if we remove that you have to be a customer already constraint and went more with a blanket promo code strategy approach? That was something that we were afraid to do early. We built the system, the MVP, to not allow this. At this point, we built a new feature to support our new hypothesis. And so that's what we did. So we spent a little bit of time on it and put a little bit of functionality in place. And here we started to scale it up. So we went back to the drawing board. We think we've got this great idea. We're going to build a little bit more and we're going to launch. And this time we actually won. And so here's some of the data on those tests. So we started, because we could open this up, our fourth test was $1 off a single purchase, but for anybody, regardless of whether you purchased or not. And again, fewer people bought the single letter, but the distribution kicked up so that the additional revenue that came in from all the other purchases surpassed our control. Then we went up market a little bit and we started doing discounts off of larger bundles. And you can see by the end, and we kept going with this, by the end of this, we were in a situation where we had a 25% increase in revenue from these tests versus the control. So what do you do at that point? So at that point, you optimize, right? So we had enough data now on these tests to say, we're ready to optimize this. And we move this into what we call an always on campaign. So now we've always got logic that basically will appear based on business logic that we validated through these tests. And we're going to continue to test these different hypotheses to different cohorts. And for us, this work has contributed to roughly a 20% overall increase in revenue compared to the control group on an ongoing basis. It doesn't mean it was 20% new revenue total for the company, but what it means is that we can consistently now measure an increase in revenue compared to the control based on these experiments that we've run. And to some degree, the features now that we've built on top of the original hypothesis. So that's it. I mean, I just wanted to give you a real kind of day in the life of some of the stuff we're doing. And if you've got questions, feel free to reach out. I just put together a free intro to growth, like a small curriculum. So you can hit that link. There's some free resources on my site, or just email me. Happy to answer any questions.
Cool, yeah. Nice case about growth and a really strong deck for our participants to check their team about growth and their experience. Is it so strong as in your team? Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much.
I want to ask some question. I think it's most popular question about growth team. So the question is about like percentage of fails in experiments. So for example, as a growth team, you should make a lot of experiments, like 100, for example. And how many is fails and how many is good experience? Is it 1 or 99? Is it 5 to 95?
Most fail. So like when you look at our, so I left a whole bunch of the process out of that deck I walked you through. I think we had 8 failures in a row before we had a win. In those, that was 8 weeks. So we're working on, test, fail, test, fail, test, fail, change messaging, change subject lines, change calls to action. And so very common to fail much more often. It's also important that you don't give up too early. So if you've got a strong hunch that that your hypothesis is actually correct, especially if you got multiple stakeholders kind of stating that, and maybe you've got customers saying, hey, this thing that you're building, I'm interested in. It's also as important to not just throw it overboard because it didn't work the first or second time. There's overhead with that though. So that's why we look at that step function. So if we had failed a couple more times, it's likely we would have just paused this and maybe revisited it a little bit later. But 80% of the tests fail. It's almost like an OKR. You really only want to, in the OKR case, you want to hit it 70% of the time. In our case, maybe you want to hit it 30% of the time. And those 30% wins become pretty big wins. They add up.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep. And one more question about this. So, in any case, when you think about some experiment and you're trying to do it, and then you get fail, it's somehow hard for you personally, and it's somehow hard for your team. And how do you working with this? Because it's
Yeah,
I think it's really important.
It is. Yeah, people get really passionate. That's a great question. The way I approach it is, I approach it as from the idea is agnostic in my view. While I might have a strong view on something, when it comes to predicting the success of it or not, I have to let that go. It's just something that you have to become almost like Zen with, where the idea really doesn't matter, and it's all about the results that you get from it. Like there's been, I have a SaaS platform, that we completely failed on with our new product development. I mean, these are features and products that I had 100% confidence and belief in, and our investors and everybody else believed in it. Our customers said they wanted it, and it turns out when it came to making more money off of that, it didn't work. So I've learned over time, and it's taken a while, to just be about the ideation and run a bunch of different stuff, and at enough volume, some of the ideas that you think are good will work and a bunch of them will fail. So I think you need to disconnect the emotional side of it and really just, approach it more scientifically, and just be objective about, what may work or what may work, because most of the time it won't work.
Yeah, I do something same with my growth ideas and so on. But it's also hard, for example, for engineers, for developers, because they have another mindset than a product manager.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe you have some tips and tricks. How do you work with your engineers to keep them motivated?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's kind of two structures. So if you're lucky enough to have a growth team and a growth engineer, the growth engineer generally will have a good sense of their work being in some ways throwaway, and more of a building the framework by which you're going to down the road build something on. If you don't have that, which it's more common to not, because most companies are small, it's startups trying to get off the ground, they don't have dedicated growth resources. What I found is it's all about going back to kind of the key metrics that you're trying to use to grow on, and have a solid understanding among the product and engineering organization that you're going to try a bunch of things and a bunch of those things are going to fail. And that you for that cohort of engineers, it's really important that the work doesn't feel throwaway. So if there's ways to kind of framework some of the experimentation or build a model that can be built upon, even if the individual tests fail, if you've got the right tooling and stuff in place, you're constantly evolving the growth side of the business. And so, good example of that might be just getting the right metrics and tracking in place, getting the right processes in place, and getting the right growth framework in place so that you can fail relatively quickly. But there's no single answer. And I think we, in some ways, do struggle with that, where, you know, engineers may feel like, hey, I'm doing this work and it didn't work in the wild, and now it's just going to get churned off. And it's like, well, you have to hit that on its head early in the process and set expectations early on in the planning process. So that basically you go in prepared, and they go in knowing that there's a good chance that some of the stuff is going to get rolled back. It's just how it is.
Cool, thanks. And let's check the final question from our participants. It's about what tool, what technologies did you use for analytical, for test cohorts, and so on?
Yeah.
Is it something internal or some external tools? Can you share maybe some?
Yeah, it's both. And I do a lot of growth advisor work and some consulting and stuff like that. And it depends on the organization, but there's a couple of things that I come back to every single time. Number one, as a growth team, you should have a weekly growth dashboard that you manually update every week. This is by far the best way to own the metrics. So, and I'm happy to share, I've got a Google sheet that is fairly generic that I'm happy to share after, but basically you figure out what those metrics are and you track them every Monday morning. That gets updated from the previous Monday through Sunday. And that gives you a sense of week over week growth, conversion rates across the entire funnel. So that's number one. There's no tool that's going to do that better than you. Mm-hmm. You may need multiple tools to fill that spreadsheet in, but you do it manually, because by doing it manually, it forces you to look at it. The second thing is, in terms of specific tools, so Firebase for native app, for some of the native app and web-based testing, Optimizely for experimentation. Mixpanel is absolutely amazing if you can afford it. I think Mixpanel by far is my favorite tool for both measurement of growth experiments as well as doing things like cohort analysis. Doing cohort analysis is really hard. It's just a hard thing to master, and you really need the view of data to get that. And so if you don't have a data scientist and you're not amazing at SQL, it's hard to do. So Mixpanel is a great tool. And then on the attribution side, something like AppsFlyer or Branch for the mobile metric side, Google Analytics for the web side. So it's a combination of tools and techniques, but I think start with your core metrics, do it manually, figure out how you need to track those. You get sophisticated. I mean, doing cohort analysis and true retention is a skill that you need to establish over time. It's as much of a mindset as it is a tool, right? So hopefully that answers the question, but there's a lot of variance in how you do it.
Yeah, cool. Yes, thank you for this trick with Manual Weekly. Awesome. Yeah, I think it's really important to feel your, not to only see these numbers. Yeah, you need to
feel it.
Yeah, you need to feel it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks one more for your time and for your sharings. And I think we will share your this your deck with the community. Of course. Yeah. That so have a good day. Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Here is the end of our meetup. I want to say thanks for all participants, and of course, thanks for all of the speakers of our meetup. I see a lot of questions, and I will take all of these questions and ask personally our speakers to help with answers on these questions in Q&A section and in our chat. So then I will take these answers and I push them into our Telegram channel, to WeChat group, so you can get answers on your questions, of course, sure. And I think in a few days we will take presentation and decks from our speakers, and also we'll send these materials in our Telegram community and in our WhatsApp chat and Facebook group. Yeah, so thanks a lot for you. And it will be cool to see all of you. And I will share you info about our next meetup. I think we'll do it in December. So see you, have a good time. Thanks a lot for your participation. I hope you get a lot of useful information and you can improve your team, improve yourself as a product manager. And if you have some additional questions, you can push it in our WhatsApp or Telegram group. So feel free. And thanks a lot for you, all of you. Yeah. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Приветики. Как дела?